The cost is 10,000 Mexican troops, and President Trump himself just went live confirming this. He's saying
President Trump was absolutely 100% clear that this is not a trade war, this is a drug war. There are perhaps 100,000 people last year that died of fentanyl, and the fentanyl is coming in across the Mexican and Canadian borders.
And already, by the way, they've closed a technical loophole that has enabled for decades now the import of cheap products from China, avoiding duties and taxes. They've already done that. No one even noticed. So,
welcome, Patriots, to another video from our channel. Are you truly ready to see what Trump is actively doing? This time, it is crucial. So, please come with me to uncover how President Trump is diligently making America great once again, and how he is strategically working masterfully regarding tariffs. So, get ready to see how our Commander-in-Chief is putting China, Canada, and Mexico on their knees. It's worth remembering that in a matter of hours, Trump did what Biden hasn't done in years.
We begin with this Fox News alert. President Trump has the world's attention now. He came through on a campaign promise, hitting Canada, Mexico, and China with tariffs to protect Americans from the flow of illegal immigrants and fentanyl in this country. And we can now report Mexico and Canada are leaning into Trump's art of the deal. The president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, spoke to Trump and is saying she will send 10,000 Mexican military to their side of the southern border. That's meant to assist with the border crisis left behind by the Biden-Harris administration. Trump says they agreed to pause any tariffs for 30 days. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The president also just spoke with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and we'll talk with him again today in a few hours. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy. Peter, a lot of movement today.
just in the last few minutes, Harris, we found out how much it costs to get rid of a 25% tariff for a month. The cost is 10,000 Mexican troops, and President Trump himself just went live confirming this. He's saying, I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariff for 1 month, during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives from Mexico. I look forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. And the president deployed some of his economic advisors to the shows this morning to explain that this wasn't about punishing consumers, it was about something else.
President Trump was absolutely 100% clear that this is not a trade war, this is a drug war. There are perhaps 100,000 people last year that died of fentanyl, and the fentanyl is coming in across the Mexican and Canadian borders. 80, 90, 95% of Mexicans want the drug war to end, and the same is true in Canada.
The only event on President Trump's schedule later today is an event at 3 p.m. celebrating the Stanley Cup win of the Florida Panthers. That's right around the time that we understand he's also supposed to talk to Prime Minister Trudeau. We will see if Trudeau is able to head off the tariffs there for a month, something that we have not heard about yet. Is he also going to talk to China's President Xi, who he is threatening with 10% tariffs as well? Harris?
All right, Peter, thank you so very much. There will be, as Peter's pointing out, if something doesn't get worked out with Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau and President Trump, there will be a 10% tariff on Canadian energy imports and a 25% tariff on all other Canadian imports. And there would have been on all Mexican imports at midnight. As you know, Mexico just moments ago said 30 days, give us 30 days to work this out. I'm paraphrasing, but that's effectively what's happening. There will also be an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports. And you just heard Peter ask, so are they going to come to the table? Well, we'll see. The day is young, and there's a lot of talking going on.
And it's impressive, right? Guys, seeing how Trump keeps his promises, leaving the globalists speechless. It was like I said, right? In a matter of hours, he achieved what Biden hasn't been able to do in years. Concrete action against illegal immigration and drug trafficking. This is real leadership. Now get ready to see how 10,000 Mexican soldiers prove that Trump is Right.
Steve Hilton, Fox News contributor. Steve, people are moving, and I think you have a pretty clear-eyed idea of why.
Because you have someone in the White House who is taking control, he's in charge, he's at the height of his powers, he's commanding the American stage, the world stage. And by the way, this is what we saw before. So the reason people are so completely kind of losing it over the weekend ever since these tariffs is just completely incomprehensible to me. I remember it very clearly last time round, because then the real issue with Mexico wasn't just fentanyl, it was also, of course, immigration and the caravans and all of that. And I remember that President Trump announced 25% tariffs on Mexico via a tweet, as it was then called, on a Sunday night just before we went on air with my show. And we covered it, and within days you saw exactly the same kind of quick reaction. The then president of Mexico sent troops to their southern border, and it's happened again. And here is someone who's completely ripping up the playbook of how things operate in terms of relationships between countries. I remember, of course, being back in the day I was in 10 Downing Street in the UK, and I saw how it was done, the traditional way. And governments, when there's an issue with another country, and they send their representatives, and you have diplomats, and maybe in 6 months there's some kind of summit, and then they issue working papers, and maybe in 2 years something happens. With President Trump, he's not interested in any of that. That's why people elected him, to get things done quickly. And just look at the results within just practically 24 hours in terms of the fentanyl issue, which, by the way, he understands so deeply, because he understands the communities most affected by it.
You know, it's great to get your front row seat to history from David Cameron's leadership in the UK and apply that now. Our brand new American citizen and friend, Steve Hilton, we really appreciate that. Please sit tight with me as I work through this, because you said 24 hours. I feel like it's been 24 minutes. Because they were still kind of trash talking with, we're coming with our own, we're doing this tariff against the United States. Treasury Secretary, who'll be a big part of this, Scott Bessent, will be in a major position in upcoming trade talks. And he wrote a recent opinion piece about this. He says, the truth is that other countries have taken advantage of the United States' openness for far too long, because we allowed them to. Tariffs are a means to finally stand up for Americans. He also said this during his confirmation hearing.
One will be for remedying unfair trade practices. Two, maybe for a more generalized tariff as a revenue raiser for the federal budget. Tariffs can be used for negotiations, whether it's for Mexico on the fentanyl crisis. So, you know, I think you and the American people should think about those three broad categories.
Wow. I tell you, the ball is moving. Now, tell me what you forecast with China, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think you're going to see the same. And of course, it's vital because the precursor chemicals are coming from China. So you need to work on every aspect of that supply chain, as it were. And again, look back what happened last time. Is just before the COVID pandemic threw a wrench in everything. But President Trump had negotiated with China, despite all the rhetoric, oh, we're going to have third world war with China, the critics were saying. But he had a good relationship with President Xi. They knew where each other stood, and he negotiated a trade deal with China. It was many people don't remember, because days later we were right in the thick of the pandemic. So I'm very confident that these two can do business with each other, and President Trump will convey to the Chinese regime that you can't keep getting away with this, and we are serious. And already, by the way, they've closed a technical loophole that has enabled for decades now the import of cheap products from China, avoiding duties and taxes. They've already done that. No one even noticed. So this new administration is deadly serious about all of this.
And what a masterstroke. Trump achieved with just one phone call what the Democrats couldn't do in decades: real commitment from Mexico to truly protect our border. This indeed shows Trump's strong negotiating power, and that he always puts Americans first. Yeah, but that's not all. Get ready now to see what the liberal media doesn't want you to know about Trump's war on drug trafficking. In fact, this is a significant issue.
Well, look, there's one more ground that they can hit with China, and you alluded to it a little bit with the talk about the COVID pandemic, and that is that most of the materials to make some of our medicines, particularly for diabetics and all sorts across the spectrum. Some of the most expensive medicines to make and for Americans to buy, they're made in China. So, I mean, there's the pressure that they have put on us. We can alleviate for ourselves if we can do some of that in this country. And Trump is also putting out that olive branch. Cut you down to 15% taxes if you start to do some of that stuff here in the United States. There's a lot he comes forth with. Look, real quickly, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, will be the first visit in the White House for his second term as President Trump. What do you make of the future and Hamas's hostage release and ceasefire deal at this point?
Well, you know, this is harder. This is harder because you're not dealing with rational actors like the leaders of major countries, whether that's China or Mexico or Canada. You're dealing with a murderous death cult in the form of Hamas, and there's very little leverage that anyone there has over them, particularly in their completely weakened state. Despite that, however, the minute that you saw President Trump, he was President-elect Trump, actually, when he got involved, you saw progress in a way that you hadn't seen for over a year from Biden, who was just there in the White House doing who knows what, falling asleep half the time, doing nothing. And then President Trump actually got things moving. And so I am optimistic. I would say I'm less optimistic because it's harder. He's got less leverage than with these other countries. But I don't think there's anyone on earth that you would rather have meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister tomorrow and trying to get the second phase of this deal done than Donald Trump, because he's already shown he knows how to do it. He's already delivered hostage releases, both in the Middle East and elsewhere across the world. We saw that with Rick Grenell the other day. I mean, the scale of his kind of practical achievements, every day something is happening because he's serious and he's engaged, well prepared, a great professional team. It's absolutely astonishing to watch this new president in action.
Well, I tell you, for all of the pearl clutching and hyperventilating that some were doing over the weekend about what's coming on certain goods in America, I don't think those people had on their bingo card that Mexico and Canada would lean in and perhaps come to the table.
Right.
But we're reporting the news as it happens. Steve Hilton, it's always great to have you in focus. Thank you.
Thanks.
Trump is waging what really matters. The war on drugs, which has been destroying American families for decades. And while the globalists are constantly complaining about trade wars in various ways, Trump is actually saving lives and creating unnecessary panic. This is prioritizing the American people and putting America first. First of all, the left might not like it, whine, complain, but Trump is doing what's necessary for the safety of the American people and putting the American people first, always first, no matter the cost. No one can deny that. That became very clear, right? President Trump is keeping his promises and making America great again. Protecting our borders, actively combating the pervasive issue of drug trafficking, and always putting the American people as our utmost priority and ensuring our national security, first of all, while the liberal media attempts to undermine and discredit his significant and impactful initiatives and actions. We're seeing him make America great again in record time on a daily basis. And if you believe it's time to prioritize security and the prosperity in the United States, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, activate the notification bell, and share this video with your friends. Let's all come together for a great America again with Donald Trump. Thank you all very much. Until our next video.